Come what may, bring it on. I'm gonna love it.
Welcome to LDS Unmarried Life, a podcast for single members of the church who find themselves that way either because they're divorced, widowed, or not yet married. There is no affiliation with the church. This podcast can be found at AnnetteTalks.com, YouTube, iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Play, and iHeartRadio. And in case you didn't listen to the last episode, my book is now out. I should say Steve and I's book is now out. It's called Dating After Divorce, an LDS Survival Guide. And you can find it on AnnetteTalks.com or Amazon.com. Also, I'm asking you, if you like this program and you want to help keep it going, to go to patreon.com/Annette Talks and maybe throw a few dollars my way every month to pay for the upkeep of this podcast. Or if you have a business and you're interested in sponsoring one or more episodes, email me at Annette@AnnetteTalks.com. All right, so we are going to be talking about long-distance relationships today, and we have a whole new group. So I'm looking forward to, from the last time we talked about long-distance relationships. So I'm looking forward to everyone's input. And we are going to start by introducing ourselves. I'm Annette Bybee. I'm 50. I've been divorced for 4 years. 3 girls, ages 11, 10, and 8. And I like taking long walks. Kristen. We're going to Kristen. I'm sitting right next to her. Kristen.
I'm not sure who I am anymore.
She always says Emily.
I know. I'm so used to Emily being the first one because she says, anyway. Sorry, Kristen.
I'm Kristen. Never married, no kids, no long-distance relationships, and I'm a millennial.
My name is McDreamy, and
Not McFeely. We settled that. Right?
McFeely is the mailman on Mr. Rogers. Very interesting name, but I'm McDreamy. I'm 39, never married, single, no kids.
Okay, what makes you dreamy, Mr. McDreamy?
He likes to dream.
You know, it's just how I am.
Yes, you are.
You'd have to ask the people that gave me that name.
All right. And Steve.
Steve Smith, 2 kids. One's on a mission in Utica, New York. My 16-year-old son lives with his mother in Utah. My phone number is 435-224-3850. I always get confused.
I said, which number are you accidentally almost giving out there?
I just get confused with so many numbers.
Someone else is getting a lot of calls.
I wish. Because I haven't got one yet. I'd love to hear.
Well, because you already have so many numbers, nobody needs to give you theirs.
435-224-3850.
All right, Emily for real this time.
I am Emily. I have recently enjoyed snowboarding, and I'm kind of sad the season's over because I still want to practice. I have 3 children, 11, 9, and 8, and we love going biking together, especially if it's to go get donuts. Not that I can eat donuts, but they love to eat donuts. We get a hot one at Krispy Kreme when we ride our bikes there. It's been fun this summer.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
And Patty.
My name is Patty. I have been divorced 14 years. I have 2 children, 21 and 17, and I moved here recently, last August, from California.
All right, Jennifer.
I'm Jennifer Mon. I'm 47. I've been divorced for 8 months. I have 4 kids. They're 22, 21, 18, and 16. And I have a son-in-law who is 24.
All right.
I'm Drew. I've been divorced about 4 years, and I have 5 kids, ranging in age from 14 to early 30s. And I had 2 just come back from missions in the last 3 months. So
And one of them was in Utica, right?
One of them was the same mission as Steve's daughter.
Cool. Did they know each other out there?
They knew of each other.
They crossed paths.
They did cross paths.
Yeah.
Yep.
All
They
right.
weren't companions or anything, but they crossed paths.
Cool. Miss Jocelyn.
I'm Jocelyn Armstrong. I'm 41. I have a 19-year-old daughter who's going to be going to BYU, Idaho come this fall. And I'm trying to think what I don't do. So I can refinish furniture, work on cars, knit, crochet. So I do the things.
Jocelyn's pretty resourceful. She's good. All right. Long distance relationships. How I love to hate them. I do kind of have a love-hate relationship with them. And that's because I recently had one. And there were some really good things about it, like the technology stuff that we'll talk about as we go along. Because the article, we're looking at an article called "Do Long Distance Relationships Work?" And I'll link to that in the show notes. And it had a lot of interesting things to say.
Caution, there is a bad word in there.
Oh yes, that's right.
Yeah.
I crossed it all out in my copy. There is one 4-letter word in there that's my least favorite of the 4-letter words. But I don't have a favorite, sorry. You know what, I accidentally went to a rated R movie yesterday and I had to walk out after 20 minutes. It was Rocket Man. For some reason I was thinking it was PG-13 because that other one about Queen was PG-13, so I think I put both in my mind in the same category. I was sitting there, I'm like, gosh, they keep saying that word. I don't understand what's going on. And then I looked, I'm like, oh my gosh. So I ended up leaving. I already saw more than I wanted to see, but don't make that mistake. That 4-letter word was said many times. Anyway, so I was recently in one, and some of the good parts about it were that with technology today, we were able to do things that you couldn't have done 50 years ago or 15 years ago. Like we would get on to Facebook and do the video call with each other while we were eating dinner, or just whatever, driving. You know, you can like hang out and see each other in really casual situations that you couldn't do back in the day when you were just writing letters or emails even. But it's almost like you're together. Now, the flip side for me, and I know this is not always the case, but I found out later that he was lying about all sorts of things. And I had no way to really verify anything because I didn't see him in real life. I didn't see him in his situations. So I think there's a difference between starting out a relationship with someone long distance and starting out in person, and then it has to go long distance for some reason. And also, I never met him in person. So to me, long distance relationships are still kind of loving to hate them because I had a bad experience in part with this last one. So who wants to talk? What fingers are going up? Yes, McDreamy first, and then we'll go to Kristen.
I have a question, and I think I missed. Sorry. That was the guy in Florida?
I'm not going to say who it was or wasn't.
Well, it wasn't, but I just was wondering if it was your 30-day...
Yeah, I'm not going to say because
okay.
people knew who the 30-day person was, and so I want to avoid being specific to either that relationship or any other relationship I was in.
Okay, that's fair.
Yes, Kristen.
So, I mostly forgot what I was going to say. But, one thing in the articles it touched on was that when you do a long distance relationship, there's so many gaps that, like, you don't see, do they put the dishes away or do they leave the toilet seat up, or all these little things that you would see in person. And so you sort of fantasize filling in them as sort of this perfect thing, and then you see them in reality if you meet later, and it's not quite what you were idealizing in your head, and how that can be so jarring.
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest problems is that if you didn't, because a lot of the people in the article were married and living long distance, which is really weird to me because I didn't know that was something anyone would voluntarily enter into, but apparently it is. And so they said there was less fighting because it was like this long distance was all the fun romantic stuff. And they couldn't find a lot of times they couldn't find a good place in their schedule to fight anyway, because they had such short times with each other on the phone or on Skype or whatever that they didn't want to waste that time fighting. But the interesting thing that they said was that a lot of times that those relationships, when they started living in the same place, they were more likely to break up than other couples because they were used to just this sort of idealized relationship where it was all fun, good times. So have any of you had a long-term, long-distance relationship? Or?
I have, and I think it's more or less...
This is Patty.
Yeah. So when you're in a long-distance relationship, it's like the first 3 months of relationship always. The first 3 months relationship are always very fun. It's exciting. You're getting to know them. You're really not looking for faults or anything like that. Not that you should be looking for faults, but if something comes up, you're not paying attention to it because it's the fun, exciting stage of the relationship. It stays that way. If you meet them and they're already living far away because you don't get a chance to see who they are, you don't know like you said before, like the bathroom, do they leave the toilet seat up? Do they, that
Or
type
do
of
they
thing?
leave it down?
Is that or down?
You know
down,
if he left it up
or-
because he's a man, so
Exactly.
he left
but,
it up.
But do they clean up after themselves? Or their clothes on the floor? How do they get along with other people? Do they argue with everybody? Are they, like you have no a way of knowing because you're only seeing the best person they could possibly be for that short period of time. And it's great because if you're spending time with them on the weekends or whatever, that's that person. But when they leave you, they go back to being their normal, regular selves, and you're not seeing that part. So you never get past that to get to the real person. That's my point.
That's your experience.
Yeah.
Yes, McDreamy.
Well, I was gonna agree with you. I just think that, and I haven't had very many long distance relationships that lasted very long, but I think to get to the real person, you have to date longer, right? Because eventually, if you're spending every weekend with somebody, you're going to see them in a situation with their family, a family reunion.
You mean in person or long distance?
In person, like. I don't know any long distance relationship that will go anywhere if you never see each other in person, right? So that's the for me. I'll entertain a long distance relationship, but what I've run into is that there's a lot of women who have kids and they have joint custody situations, so they can't move, or they build a life there and they don't want to leave it, and I've built a life here with my businesses, and so there's a lot of complexity that goes into a long distance relationship.
Yes, and Steve actually looks like he wants to say something, so
I
what's up?
think before you get into one, you both just have to be brutally honest with each other as to whether or not you'd be able to move. Because I've been in quite a few, and I've always been told that they were willing to move, but when it came right down to it, none of them were. And in my situation at the time, for most of them, I had promised my daughter she could graduate from the same high school. So I wasn't going to be able to move either. But I put that right up front. I can't move right now.
Mm-hmm. So are you willing to move right now? Or
I could, but my quality of life and income would go down greatly.
Mm-hmm.
What's your phone number?
Yeah, you don't want to say that.
But if somebody was patient and could help me out because I was going to move to relocate to them, yeah, I could work through that.
Would you be willing to have a long distance marriage?
I would.
Really?
For a while.
Why? I mean, what if you did
not forever, but I would for a while.
for a while, like a couple of years, or that's so interesting. Like that thought never.
Like if
even,
I could see the light at the end of the tunnel, I would.
That thought never even occurred to me. Like to me, the whole point of being married is being together in the same room, right? So it's so weird that in the article actually says that some people actually prefer long distance. And because they still have time to do things with other people, and they basically because the relationship is on their schedule, right? When they want to be with that other person. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Emily, did you wanted to say something?
Well, if they both agree on that as being the kind of relationship they want, then I guess that fits what they're both looking for. That works well for what they're looking for. That's not what I'm looking for. I think that would be very lonely. Even still being with friends and coworkers and children and doing things, I want that companionship with someone. I want to work well together with someone in person. And travel happens with work, and so people travel, but if it's happening most of the time, then it starts to become more of that long distance relationship. If it's for a short time, I can see how what they called background Skype in the article, where a Skype is on when you're doing things, after work in the evenings, you're going through your routine and talking or not talking, but just having it on so that you can talk if you want to. That sounds like a great idea, but again, that's once people know each other, and that distance for me needs to be a temporary thing that doesn't go long. I need to be with someone. That would be too lonely for me.
So could you move, Emily?
Right now I cannot move. Could this situation change? It could. But as it is now, today, the expectation and understanding is because both dad and mom and myself and my ex want to be parents, want to parent the children, then which I'm grateful for. It's great for the children. It's most important for the children to have that. So because that's the case, in 10 years I can. Mm-hmm. I can move 10 years this summer. So
what about a 10-year long-distance relationship?
No. No.
You know what? I was thinking, though, there are certain advantages to it, like the little devil on my left shoulder is like, yeah, when you start arguing, you just be like, oh, bye. There goes Skype. Like, there's no stay in the room. You're going to stay in the room and work this out. No, I'm not. Bye.
See, hanging out, that causes worse things later. But that article did talk about people who have limited time because of military service. They focus more on the building of the relationship and instead of the conflict in the relationship. I think there's pros and cons to that, but it is good to focus on the building. But something that I'm noticing now with the apps and sites that I'm using for dating and getting to know people, I really appreciate when a man is upfront about whether he can move or not, or whether he can date, he feels ready to date or not. But what I really am looking for is, what does a positive friendship look like? What does it look like, sound like, feel like? I want to be surrounded by and interact frequently with men who are good people, who are kind, who are warm-hearted, who are thoughtful. They don't have to sit and talk about their feelings. That's not what I'm talking about. I mean, like, men who are solid, confident, good souls. Like, I want to be around that as much as possible to fill my experiences with more of those positive experiences than what I currently have had with past relationships that did not work out.
So I noticed that on Mutual and Planet that you are talking to men in other states.
Yes.
So do you tell
Worldwide.
them up front that you're not relocating and you're just maybe...
When that comes up, yes. Okay. Yep.
Because I know I put it in my profile that I'm only looking for locals, and I still get guys reaching out from other states. So I don't know, if a guy's willing and able to move, yeah, I'd be willing to talk to him. It would be long distance for a while, obviously. Mm-hmm. But it feels to me like a waste of time in a way, because a lot of times, like McDreamy and Steve have said, if you, like McDreamy over here, sorry, I can't not laugh or roll my eyes when I say that, has a business situation where he can't just up and move to another state easily. And that's why in the article talks about a lot of the reason that this happens, and they don't even go into, for us, the main reason is usually kids. For me, I can't go. I have 3 kids. I would not take them from their dad.
Yeah.
And so I may actually end up moving at some point. If he and I agree we both want to move to the same place, then we'll make that move. But I won't say, well, sorry, so sorry, I found a guy in Utah, so we're out of here. That's not going to happen. I wouldn't, even if I could, do that to them. But a lot of times, like the article talks about, there's 2 careers going on, and some careers do not move easily from where you're at to another state. And so sometimes people opt to stay long distance so that they can each keep those careers in place until there's a time that one of the, members of the couple can move. That's Patty.
I was just going to say, from my place of employment, I see that quite often. Where that happens, someone gets transferred to another position that's a great position, an opportunity for them. They don't want a divorce, but their kids are here, so the spouse goes and lives there. And then when they are able to, they fly back and forth, to come see. And it helps the kids stay grounded and so forth. But for me personally, I could not do that. But,
it's like nesting, right?
Yeah, but but at the same token, if you have so many years in there and someone has a fantastic job opportunity, right, and they're growing in their company and what have you, do you say no? Or do you say, yes, you know what, go for it and pursue your passion? And this is what you're really good at, whatever, you support the spouse to do that. But that's after they've already been together for years and so forth. They don't marry someone who lives so far away and for years are, going back and forth. It doesn't start that way. And that makes sense to me. Mm-hmm. But to start off that way, I think that would be very hard.
Yeah, I think starting out, it would almost seem like that's where it's going to go.
Yeah.
Because if you can't start together, there's no guarantee you're going to end up somehow getting together. Whereas if you've been married already for 5 or 10 years or whatever, it's most likely going to be a temporary situation, which I could see living with for a while if I knew it was temporary. But long term, yeah, it'd be hard. Yes, Kristen.
So what, in our opinion, after our experiences or reading articles, do we think the as close to ideal as possible long distance relationship progression would be? So maybe we start on Facebook and then kind of what happens.
Jocelyn.
Well, when we went to conference, there was a couple who had a long distance relationship, and they kind of they said, so first of all, you have to be financially set because there's a lot of flying back and forth.
Yeah.
And so I would point that out. And I think for me, ideally, it would actually come down to a prayer, because there's absolutely no way on my own I would make the decision to leave my family, my friends, everyone behind and go move someplace on the promise of one person. Like, that is like from last week's from the last podcast, talking about throwing somebody a lifesaver, right? They would be your lifesaver. That's all you would have in that town until you found a job, till you found, like, that would take, for me, to make that decision by myself. I would know I wouldn't. But like, if I had like a really strong feeling that was what I was supposed to do, and all of the signs, I say, okay, I'll do it, but I would not be happy about it. So I'm not sure.
Yes, Emily.
With that expectation that you brought up, that couple, I don't think they actually visited in person till like 9 to 12 months, when they started like traveling back and 3 months. Is that what they said?
Three.
When they
Yes.
met in person, but when
Yeah.
they started dating seriously, was it 9 to 12 months before they were serious?
Um,
Like, they would go back and forth here and there, but
if I'm buying a plane ticket, I'm serious. That's a lot of money.
but for them,
I think that's what
expectation
they said, because
Oh,
I
okay.
mean,
all right.
they thought this could be a thing, and that's when they decided to meet in person, was to find out. And once they did, then I think they were.
So was it a year to a year and a half after that they got engaged?
I think it was about a year, and it was because one of her kids was graduating.
That's correct.
I think it was
I remember
her
that.
last child graduated, so she felt like she could move, but she wasn't going to uproot her kids.
But they traveled a lot. Like
That's-
they would take turns every other week.
The
to
light at
travel
the end
back
of the
and forth.
tunnel.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I could do light at the end of the tunnel, but 10 years.
10 years is a long time. It's the same for me.
In this
Like,
moment
10
right
years.
now, I can't see how that would work. Maybe someone could help me understand that, but right now I can't see that working for me. Anyway.
Yes, Kristen.
So I and many of our listeners were not at whatever conference you're talking about.
Okay.
Can we explain what you're talking about?
This was the Denver Singles Conference last month, about a month ago now, the one that I spoke at. So if you want to see my
Sit on your friends.
so most of my friends were at, and you can see that on YouTube actually. But there was a couple that spoke before me. They were actually both in a second marriage together, and so but they were long distance. They kind of gave us hope because they met online.
LDS
And
Planet.
was it Planet? Yeah, because
Yes.
I was like, what? Someone actually met somebody on Planet?
I have friends that have met.
I have many
on Planet.
friends.
I told them I think
Matt.
they were the last
Yeah.
ones. Success stories in there, but they're...
Yeah, they were the last of the great.
But my friends had to relocate.
And
Yeah.
I've had many friends who met on Planet, and some relocated to get married.
Well, it's good to hear it does happen on occasion. McDreamy.
I just want to point out I raised my hand.
Yes, thank you. I know we had a free for all for a minute there.
No, what was interesting about that couple is that they talked about making it as real as possible.
Yeah.
So they did video chat. They got together in person. It wasn't like they were doing long distance, but they were doing things that authenticated that they were who they say they are. And so I've met people online that all they want to do is message. They don't want to talk on the phone, or they don't want to video chat. And it's like, and I've had experiences where it turned out because their pictures were fake. Mm-hmm. Like they were completely lying about who they are. So
Catfish.
so a lot of
Gosh.
so long distance adds some complication to dating for sure.
It adds, well, there's a gap in your knowledge of that person if you're not seeing them on a regular basis. Not that you can't get that in a regular relationship or short distance, I guess you could call it, because you can. People can withhold information from you, purposely or not. But in long distance, I think that if you're going to do long distance, you need to find a way to see each other as often as you can. And then when you're in person with each other, to try and gather as much information, not just be like one long date, like try and see how they live, what their kids are like. Try and get as much information as you can. Jocelyn.
I have done, so I live in Castle Rock, and I dated a guy who lived in Longmont. Given Denver traffic, that was long distance.
Yeah.
And okay, so this hand raising thing, I keep forgetting because I listened to what you guys say and then I forgot what I was going to say. Which means I'm listening, so that's good. But I have once again forgotten what I was going
No,
to say.
I know it's hard with this because we've got a lot of people.
Yeah.
Yes, Drew?
I have been involved in a number of long distance relationships and relationships here in the Denver metro area, and And I think I agree with Steve that fairly early on, it's good to talk about when it's long distance what your ability is to move or not move. Like right now, I don't have the ability to move, but I will in a few years. So it's not temporary. It's not long term. And the women I date long distance are in Utah, where my kids are. So I travel there a lot. So I see them both in the electronic means and in person, because I think they're both important.
It seems like a
Especially to see
hybrid.
them in person.
You've got like a hybrid going on because you're there once a week.
do.
I mean, once a month for a week, right?
Yeah.
Jocelyn.
I finally remembered. I do think that it's important. So one of the things that at least for me, that I feel like because so much of a relationship is based on, well, like affection. To be honest, I need to be close to the person. I need to be talking to them every day. And if I'm not moving forward, I'm slowly pulling away. Like it's like a river, like there is no sitting still. It's not like, okay, so I have time for you right now, and then we're just going to pause everything, and in 2 weeks we can pick this back up again. It doesn't work that way. I am slowly pulling away that entire time. So in 2 weeks I'm like, oh, who are you again? Okay, we have to restart, reboot. And so unless you can put that time in, on a day, it's not going to work because I can't actually move forward.
So texting comes into play there.
To a little bit, to a point, but you want to be around the person and having those jokes and having that familiarity, and it's really hard if it's long distance.
Well, and you bring up a good point, and I'm just going to raise it before we go over to Jennifer, who's patiently waiting. That physical affection is important. And I like having my back scratched, so it's hard to do that. Here, let me get my phone and put it up to my back. Could you just put your hand right there? Okay. Doesn't really work long distance, So especially if your physical touch is one of your top love languages, long distance is going to be really challenging.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, of course, you're not getting into as much trouble because you're not. All right, Jennifer.
I'm not sure how to transition away from the
That's
physical
right.
touch point, but I think you mentioned, and I think also, I wanted to call him McFeely.
Now that you said it, it's sticking.
McDreamy also mentioned this keeping it real. But I have to really praise my daughter, who recently got married. She said that she felt like it was really important during dating to keep things as real as possible, and during their dates, to have dates where you learned about the person and how they would react in real life situations. So one weekend, when she was home from BYU, she and her fiance, or they were maybe not engaged yet, but they built this gigantic table in the garage, and then it was really funny because they could hardly get it inside the house. So, but they got together and they bought lumber. They'd never built furniture before, but they built a table together, and it's still in the garage. But they really had fun doing it. And they would do some things like that where it was just real life stuff, where it wasn't the kind of thing who gets together and builds a table on a date, but they did. And she said, we work well together, and they really, really do. So I feel like if you are in a situation like that where you don't see each other often, and they didn't for 2 years, she went to Africa over her summer break, which I remember thinking, I can't believe he's putting up with this, but he did, because he adored her, and he still adores her, and they're awesome. But they for 2 years, it was very, very long distance, and they did see each other as often as they could. But I think some of what made that successful was they would get together, they would do real life things, they would cook meals together, and they would do things that weren't necessarily things that you would think of as being the fun things. But I think that helped them both to see how they worked together, and I think that was helpful.
That's awesome. We have a hand over here, Jocelyn.
I think, well, what you're saying, that is one of the things that I think is one of my favorite things to do. I think one of the best dates I ever had was actually, we went out and we were helping somebody move. And I laughed so hard my stomach hurt the next day because we were having so much fun assembling furniture. And then we went back and we went to Costco afterwards, and we were laughing hysterically, going through eating, while they were doing their grocery shopping. So, I mean, those are the sorts of interactions that you can really miss out on. So it seems like everything's great because you're doing all these fun things that are supposed to be fun, that are supposed to be romantic. But then when, the rubber hits the road and you're actually doing the day-to-day things, that's really hard to get a feel for in a long-distance relationship. Maybe he doesn't like to do dishes, and maybe he's going to go sit on the, are you going to be talking to each other, helping each other? Do you work well together? That is something that's really lost, I think.
Yeah, I think working well is good. Also, a man should see us without our makeup.
Yes.
All right, Patty, you've been waiting patiently.
Yeah. Now I was going to stay back to the comment Jocelyn had about the day-to-day, and if you're not close or, whatever, talking, if there's, I gotta get off the phone because my kids are here, I have my kids this week, or anything like that, whether it's long distance or not, if there's a hard stop, if you're having a problem, this person's now not accessible to you for whatever reason, it makes it hard. So then when you have to go back in later on and re-engage with them, you don't really want to.
Yeah.
Because they just gave you a hard stop for something, you're having a moment and you need to talk to them and they're not available to you. You know what I mean? And they won't be for 3 to 4 days or whatever happens. It makes it very, very hard.
And regardless of the reason, it hurts.
It does.
And
exactly. You can rationalize the reason and everything else, understand it.
You can choose not to be. Yeah. You can choose not to behave on it. But that doesn't mean it doesn't hurt.
Yes.
Well, a lot of times with kids, if there are times when we're not going to be available to someone.
Yeah.
However, it shouldn't be 3 or 4 days. I might say, look, I'm putting my kids. Guys will call me at 9 o'clock, and I'm like, this is never going to be a good time for me to call me at 9 o'clock unless it's like a Friday night, and then we should be on a date.
No.
But because I'm putting my kids to bed, and so they just need to know that. But if they call me with like an emergency or something, I'll find some way to talk.
Well, it depends, because some people don't want their kids to know they're actually really out there dating. So therefore, if they're talking on the phone or whatever else, and you call and they have their kids, this happened many, many years ago, my kids were younger, but they don't want their kids to know really what's going on in their private life when they're not with them. So when they're there, they're all in with their kids, which is fabulous, but also their other life that they have when their kids aren't there is on hold. And so therefore it's like, well, you could have called me. I'm like, well, you already told me if your kids aren't available, if your kids are there, you can't talk. So I didn't call you because you already put that precedent out there. So I think it just depends. I mean, granted, things happen when you do have kids, but if someone says, hey, my kids are with me, they don't know I'm dating, so I don't want to have to introduce them to anyone yet because we haven't got to that point. Totally understandable. So again, if it's long distance or what have you, when do you get an opportunity to re-engage?
Yeah, well, that's another whole issue about kids. People need to read my book, but you shouldn't be not. Your kids should know that you're dating. They don't need to know the details, but the more they see that you're holding things back, it seems secretive, and I don't really like that.
I agree, totally agree, but yeah.
All right, so Steve, Mr. Phone over here buzzing, you had something you wanted to say earlier. Is it still there?
Well, I think too, it's so hard to disguise a myriad of situations in a long distance too, where we've said, they don't do the dishes, they don't put the toilet seat up, they do different things, but also a church membership. Do they really go to the temple? Are they really who they are presenting themselves to be? Is really hard to distinguish in a long distance relationship.
Yep, that's why you've got to have as many ways as possible to know this person, even if it means that you're doing some vetting on the side, like talking to these people, their friends.
Well, just as an example, I had a friend call me one time and say, hey, this person's from your hometown. Do you know them? And so I called one person that was friends with them on Facebook, and they said, oh yeah, he's a good guy. They won't end up in his trunk or anything.
Your hometown.
He still wasn't the person that my friend thought he was.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that we recommend in the book is to try and vet people. And so, especially if you're long distance, maybe you can, now I've learned this the hard way, if you're going to date someone in another state, maybe go through your Facebook page and see if there's somebody else in that state. Look at your friends, see if you can find someone else in that state, and maybe find out. Because if I had done any research on this last dude, I could have maybe reached out to someone in that state and said, hey, do you know this person? And I would have found out a lot of really interesting things that I didn't. So, yes, you have something, Jennifer.
And I think playing on that, I think it's an advantage of the church being so small. Mm-hmm. But I've had a few of those situations where someone that I was talking to online did know someone, and it did make me feel a little bit more comfortable that they knew someone who used to be in my ward. Or actually, in another case, he had gone to high school with someone that was a very, very close friend of mine, and it kind of that helps so much. And you can't always do that, but I think it's just comforting to be able to have that opportunity. So
yeah, because a lot of times when you find someone online, well, this is what I found out later is that this guy only sought out people long distance, and so if that's happening, there's a reason for that. Right, and so it's easier to hide stuff from someone long distance than it is if you can go to someone's ward and talk to someone's bishop. It's a little harder to hide. But if you're, across the country from somebody or in a different country, I guess people do that international. I can't imagine the point to international dating, but it does happen.
It happens.
I would be willing to give my bishop's phone number, my friends' phone numbers, anything if they wanted to vet who
Yeah,
I
same
am.
here.
I have no problem.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that.
I agree,
I
absolutely.
agree.
So everyone agrees that we would all be willing. I don't know about Kristen. We'd all be willing to let give out our information to potential dates or relationship folks. I have nothing to hide. Come to my ward. Come meet my bishop. Come meet some of my friends. See what they have to say.
Now you're gonna have people randomly popping in. Who are these
right.
new people?
Or in the Eastridge Ward, in the Highlands Ranch Stake. You could meet Emily and I at the same time if you
That's
come.
true.
Pumping up the membership drive.
That's right. If you come tomorrow, you can see me teach gospel doctrine. So that'd be a good
I
time.
miss that.
Yeah.
Being able to see.
All right. What else do we want to say about this topic?
I found it interesting that there was someone had were married. They've been married for 1 year at this time the study was taken. They had known each other for 3 years total, and one of those years was marriage. One lives in Boston, one lives in Haiti.
Haiti, yeah, I saw that.
And they would see each other twice a year. And I just thought, what? The first time I heard about long distance relationships was when I was at college, and there was a woman who lived in our unmarried dorms who was married, but her husband was in India or somewhere in Europe, and she was going to school and taking classes for a couple semesters. And so I thought, oh wow, that's interesting that was her situation. That was the first time I'd ever heard of that, and it really settled very heavily on me that is not something I ever want to be in. That's not a situation I would ever want to be in. My heart would be so torn and heartbroken to do that. But if it was something that was going to better my situation, there's just so much online I could do at this point too, in other colleges, but to be apart for a year and a half on another continent, that would be too much for me.
Yeah, that
In
would be
other
hard.
cultures, it's a lot more accepted.
It is.
We're going to go on with Kristen because she raised her hand.
So, without judging, because certainly I think there are couples and situations where that really is the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
It seems a little counterintuitive to me, but I think it's a question of just priorities. In every one of these situations, people are sacrificing something. Some are keeping their careers and sacrificing together time, whereas others might, and usually it's the woman who would sacrifice his career and go where the man is, just generally speaking in our culture, but it's not always the case. I've heard it go other ways. But this always involves setting some sort of priority as far as if you're going to do long distance because we want to keep such and such versus if we're going to give up something else to be together. So I think, Emily, with you, it sounds like your priority is be together rather than whatever else, but
Most of the time. That's how it is
Yeah.
now. I can't see it any other way. I just haven't experienced it successfully in any other way.
right. So I just think that, you need revelation and prayer and see where you are in
Yes.
whatever season you're in your life. And I'm tempted to think, someone's being selfish because they want to keep their career and stay away from their husband. And that's a temptation to judge on my part, but I also realize that everyone in different seasons of their life can have different answers, and where something that is the wrong answer for me or you can be the right answer for someone else.
Absolutely.
So,
Well, I would have a long distance relationship if an angel came down and told me to. That's about where I feel like.
I'd be hard pressed to follow that. Even then, that would be difficult. It'd be a challenge. It would be a challenge for me. I know myself too well, and that would be a huge challenge for me.
Yeah, it would be. Well, I shouldn't say not just angel, but if I met some guy who was like the unicorn that I'm apparently looking for, that happened to Steve's nodding his head. Thanks, Steve. And he happened to live in a different place, I would be willing to at least explore it if I knew we could get together eventually, because I'm not finding the unicorn locally right now. So I can't say I'd never do it. Yes, Patty.
I just read another article recently is saying that, if you box yourself in and saying they have to live within 20 miles of me, they have to this, they have to, and they have all these different things, Heavenly Father has a way of making things work for you when it's necessary. So when he wants to move you somewhere, whatever, he will. And he'll make that path open. But if you box yourself in, you're limiting yourself. To say that I would originally want to get married to someone who was definitely living apart, definitely not. But the same token, if something happened, Heavenly Father put that person in my path, and the stars aligned, whatever, and everything, and this was the person I've been waiting for, or what have you, then I would consider it. You know what I mean? And I would be in prayer all the time. I'd be in the temple all the time, trying to do everything I can to help figure out, okay, how do we make this work?
Yeah.
And he'll find the path for you.
Yeah, good. Very good point. I have a negative viewpoint of that because the dude that I was talking to said that same thing. Well, Heavenly Father can open a way, and then I found out, and you can be a big liar too. But no, I think you're right. If it wouldn't have to be an angel, but if the Spirit told me give this one a chance, then I would do it.
Absolutely.
Because I'm used to doing things that I'm afraid of right now anyway. So did you have something, Jennifer?
I did. One of the things I think is important to consider too is that the reality is that not all members of the church live in Denver. Not all members of the church live in Utah or in Idaho. I have a friend who lives in St. Louis, and he was telling me that recently that he went to a singles conference in Columbus, Ohio, and I thought, wow, that's kind of far. But he said, well, really, it's realistic. He said there aren't that. I don't know how many stakes he said there were, but he said there aren't that many members in St. Louis, and frankly it kind of feels to me like there aren't that many members in Colorado Springs, and so I think the situation becomes a little bit more realistic for people who live farther away from areas where there are lots of members, because there just aren't that many people to date.
Oh, you're right. That's an awesome point. I'm glad you brought it up, because I know lots and lots of people. I have listeners, because I have a listener that messaged me a while back, and she said she lives, I think, in Pennsylvania, someplace on the East Coast. And she said there just aren't many out here. And then I had another friend in Missouri, same thing. They have to go a long way to find a group of singles to hang out with, or else it's there's 5 people in their area, and once you've dated that 5, what? So that may be someone's only option if they can't move for whatever reason. I feel sorry for people. I mean, because Denver's small, but it's not small like out east or in the south or in a lot of places. We do have some options here where, we're going to a dance tonight. There'll probably be a decent showing, where a lot of places they don't have enough people to get a dance together. So that makes a lot of sense. And so for you listeners out there in isolated places, don't yell at the phone or whatever you're listening on. There's good reason. I see that there's a good reason for some long distance relationships. Just hopefully they're not permanently long distance. Mm-hmm. All right, anybody have anything else they want to say about this before we wrap it up? Nope? All right, great. So it's been a good discussion. I'm still not super duper fond of long distance, but I'm at least open to it. Just by a raise of hands, how many at the table would be willing to, given the right circumstances, enter a long distance relationship?
Yeah, given the right circumstances.
All right, everybody raise their hand. So none of us are saying never or no way. So I would love to hear from listeners on this topic. If you want to comment on AnnetteTalks.com underneath this episode, that would be great. Or if you want to go to Facebook /Annette Talks, that's another place. So thank you for listening to LDS Unmarried Life, where LDS singles gather.
Bloom where I'm planted. I won't take things for granted. Come what may, bring it on. I'm gonna love